Imagine a scene inside the executive offices of Microsoft that looks more like a high-stakes war room than a corporate headquarters. The atmosphere is thick with tension, and for the first time in decades, the confident smiles have vanished from the faces of the leadership team. The news that just hit the wires is unprecedented. 50 of Microsoft's top-tier senior software engineers, the very architects responsible for some of the most critical systems in Windows and the Azure cloud, have handed in their resignations at the exact same time. This wasn't a slow trickle of talent. It was a coordinated walkout. But the real shocker isn't that they left, it's where they are going. They aren't moving to Google or Apple. They are joining forces to lead a massive migration towards the open-source world of Linux. Reports are emerging that Bill Gates is in a state of absolute desperation, personally reaching out to former colleagues and advisors to understand how the company's internal culture could have fractured so catastrophically. The Linux migration is no longer a hobbyist dream. It has become a corporate nightmare for Redmond. And today we are going to dive deep into exactly why the most brilliant minds in tech are abandoning ship to build a future that Microsoft can't control. To understand why 50 of the world's most talented engineers would walk away from massive salaries and stock options, you have to look at what has been happening behind the curtain of Windows 11. For the people who actually build the code, an operating system isn't just a product, it's an environment. Lately, that environment has become increasingly polluted. Engineers thrive on efficiency, clean architecture, and user-centric design. But over the last few years, the mandate from Microsoft leadership shifted. The focus moved away from pure performance and stability towards data harvesting, telemetry, and forced advertising. Imagine being the engineer who spent months optimizing a kernel process, only to see the marketing department slap a massive, resource-heavy AI widget on top of it that tracks every user's click. It's soul-crushing for a developer. These 50 engineers didn't just quit for more money. They quit because they lost faith in the mission. They realized that the Windows they loved had become a billboard disguised as an operating system. The timing of this mass exodus is critical. We are currently in the middle of a global shift in how we perceive digital privacy. With the announcement of features like Recall, which takes constant snapshots of a user's screen, the internal alarm bells at Microsoft reached a deafening level. Many of the engineers who left were reportedly the ones who raised red flags about the security and privacy implications of such features. When their concerns were overruled by the drive for AI dominance, the decision to leave became inevitable. They saw the writing on the wall. Microsoft was becoming a data company first, and a software company second. In contrast, the world of Linux offered them a clean slate, a world where the code is open for everyone to see, where there are no hidden trackers, and where the goal is simply to build the best tool possible. For a pure coder, Linux is the promised land, and these 50 pioneers are leading the charge. Bill Gates' desperation stems from a very specific fear. He knows better than anyone that a tech company is only as good as its smartest 10%. If you lose 50 of your top-tier engineers in a single day, you aren't just losing workers. You are losing institutional knowledge that takes decades to replace. These were the people who knew where all the bodies were buried in the legacy code of Windows 10 and 11. They were the ones who could fix the unfixable bugs that keep enterprise clients paying for support. Without them, the stability of the entire ecosystem is at risk. Rumors suggest that Gates has been in emergency meetings with Satya Nadella, trying to figure out if there is any way to reverse the trend, but the engineers have already made their move. They've reportedly secured funding for a new venture that aims to make Linux the standard for the corporate desktop, removing the final barriers that have kept Windows in power for so long. For a long time, the excuse for staying on Windows was simple: I need it for my apps. But as these top-tier engineers move over to Linux, that excuse is evaporating. They are building better compatibility layers, more robust drivers, and interfaces that are actually more intuitive than the cluttered mess of Windows 11. When the people who helped design the Windows file system start building a better version for Linux, you know the balance of power is shifting. This isn't just about a few people installing Ubuntu on their old laptops. This is about a fundamental relocation of the industry's brain trust. If the best developers are on Linux, that's where the best software will be. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that Microsoft is terrified of. One of the biggest factors fueling this migration is the concept of digital sovereignty. In the modern era, governments and large corporations are becoming increasingly wary of being locked into a proprietary ecosystem. They don't want to be at the mercy of a single company that can change the terms of service at any time or force an update that breaks their workflow. Linux offers total control. You can fork it, you can modify it, and you can secure it according to your own needs. The engineers who left Microsoft understood this better than anyone. They saw the internal push to move everything to the cloud, making the local PC nothing more than a terminal for Microsoft's servers. They chose to fight for the idea that your computer should be yours. This philosophical divide is what is driving the most talented people in the industry away from Redmond. The crisis mode at Microsoft isn't just about losing employees. It's about a loss of vision. For 40 years, Microsoft's vision was a computer on every desk. Now that goal has been achieved, but they don't know what comes next other than make as much money from those computers as possible. Linux, meanwhile, is entering a golden age. With the rise of the Steam Deck proving that Linux can handle high-end gaming, and the cloud already running almost entirely on Linux, the desktop was the last frontier. By quitting and moving to the open-source community, these 50 engineers are focusing their energy on that final hurdle. They are working on making the transition seamless for business users, ensuring that Microsoft Office alternatives are top-notch and that hardware support is flawless. As the news of the walkout spread throughout the tech world, the reaction was electric. It sent a message to every other developer in the industry. You don't have to stay in a corporate environment that compromises your values. The Linux migration has effectively become a movement for developer freedom. We are seeing a surge in contributions to the Linux kernel and major desktop environments like KDE and GNOME. It's as if a massive surge of high-octane fuel was suddenly injected into the open-source engine. Bill Gates, who famously fought against open source in the 90s, branding it as a threat to the American way of life, is now witnessing his old enemy become the refuge for his best talent. The irony is staggering. The technical implications of this migration are profound. Windows has long been criticized for its spaghetti code. Millions of lines of legacy instructions that go back to the 90s. Fixing it is like trying to repair a skyscraper while it's still being built. Linux, however, is modular. It's built on the do one thing and do it well philosophy. The engineers who left Microsoft are now applying their deep understanding of operating system architecture to help optimize Linux even further. They are tackling the complex issues of audio routing, multi-monitor support, and high-fidelity graphics handling. These are the last-mile problems that have kept some users from switching. With 50 experts focused specifically on these areas, we can expect Linux to become even more polished than Windows in a very short amount of time. Inside Microsoft, the exodus has created a vacuum. Younger, less experienced engineers are being stepped up into roles they aren't ready for. This often leads to more bugs, slower patch cycles, and ultimately, more frustrated users. It's a vicious cycle. As the quality of Windows declines, more users look at Linux. As more users look at Linux, more developers move there. And as more developers move there, Windows gets even harder to maintain. Microsoft's attempt to fix this by integrating Linux into Windows with WSL Windows Subsystem for Linux has backfired. Instead of keeping people in the Windows ecosystem, it gave them a taste of how much better the Linux tools are. It showed them a world without registry errors and forced reboots. Bill Gates' desperation might also be linked to the enterprise market. Microsoft's real bread and butter isn't the home user. It's the massive contracts with governments and Fortune 500 companies. These entities value stability above all else. If they see that Microsoft's top talent is fleeing and that the operating system is becoming a privacy nightmare, they will start looking for alternatives. We are already seeing cities in Germany and government agencies in China move towards Linux-based solutions. If this trend reaches a tipping point in the United States, Microsoft's core business could dissolve. The loss of those 50 engineers is a sign to the business world that the foundation is cracking. But let's look at the human element. Why did they quit together? In the tech world, engineering teams are often very tight-knit. They survive together through grueling release cycles and overnight troubleshooting. When a core group of respected seniors decides that enough is enough, it creates a ripple effect. They realized that their collective voice was more powerful than their individual complaints. By quitting as a block, they sent a signal that couldn't be ignored by the board or the shareholders. It was a vote of no confidence in the direction of the company. It was a statement that tech should be about empowerment, not exploitation. Microsoft's public relations team has been working overtime to downplay the news. They talk about natural attrition and new opportunities for growth within the company. But the tech community knows better. You don't lose 50 seniors in a day due to natural attrition. This was a strategic blow. While Microsoft moves towards a Windows as a service model where you pay for features you used to own, the Linux migration is building an alternative that is free, fast, and respectful. The desperation of the leadership is a realization that their old tactics of embrace, extend, and extinguish won't work this time. You can't extinguish something that the entire world is building together. The Linux migration is also being driven by the hardware revolution. We've seen Apple move to its own silicon with incredible results. Microsoft has struggled to get Windows to run well on ARM-based chips. Linux, however, has been running on everything from tiny sensors to giant supercomputers for years. As the world moves away from traditional x86 architecture, Linux is perfectly positioned to take over. The engineers who left Microsoft are now working on ensuring that Linux provides the best experience on the next generation of processors. They are building an OS that is ready for the future, while Windows is still trying to figure out how to handle the past. Think about the user experience. On Windows, you are constantly bombarded. Use Edge. Sign up for 365. Tell us your birthday. It's exhausting. On Linux, the OS stays out of your way. It's a tool that waits for you to tell it what to do. For the 50 engineers who left, this was a matter of professional pride. They wanted to build something that people loved using, not something people felt trapped in. The Linux migration is essentially a return to the roots of computing, where the user was the pilot, not the passenger. Microsoft's crisis is worsened by the fact that they can't simply buy their way out of this. In the past, they would just acquire the competition. But you can't buy Linux. You can't acquire the thousands of independent developers around the world who contribute to it out of passion. By losing their own talent to this community, Microsoft is watching their competitive advantage melt away. Bill Gates knows that in the world of software, the best code wins. And right now, the best code is being written by people who don't work for him anymore. As this story continues to unfold, we are seeing more developers from other tech giants expressing interest in the Linux migration. It's becoming a brain drain from the entire Silicon Valley corporate model. The move toward open source is seen as a way to work on meaningful projects without the baggage of quarterly earnings reports and ad tracking metrics. The 50 engineers from Microsoft are the tip of the spear. They have proven that there is a life after big tech, and that life involves building a more open and honest digital world for everyone. The crisis mode at Redmond is also an opportunity for Microsoft to reflect. If they want to stop the bleed, they need to listen to why these people left. They need to stop the intrusive telemetry. They need to stop the forced updates. They need to make Windows a place where privacy is a feature, not an afterthought. But can they? Their current business model is so tied to data and services that a pivot back to pure software might be impossible for their shareholders to accept. This is why the desperation is so palpable. They are trapped in a cage of their own making. Meanwhile, the Linux community is thriving. Every day, new distros are coming out that focus on specific user needs. There is a Linux for gamers, a Linux for musicians, a Linux for scientists, and now, thanks to the ex-Microsoft guys, a highly polished Linux for enterprise professionals. The fragmentation that used to be seen as a weakness of Linux is now its greatest strength. It offers choice in a world where Microsoft offers an ultimatum. The migration is gaining speed, and with it the hope for a more diverse and resilient tech ecosystem. If you are a tech enthusiast, this is one of the most exciting times in history. We are watching the fall of a monopoly and the rise of a decentralized alternative. It's a story about the power of individuals to change the course of an entire industry. The 50 engineers who quit Microsoft didn't need a massive marketing budget or a global sales team. They just needed their brains, their keyboards, and the courage to say no more. Their migration to Linux is the beginning of a new chapter in technology, and we are all going to benefit from the innovation they bring to the open source world. The desperation of Bill Gates and the Microsoft leadership is a warning to every other company. Respect your engineers and respect your users. If you don't, the best and brightest will find another way. They will build their own path. As we look at the screens our children will use and the servers that will run our future cities, it's becoming increasingly clear that they won't be running proprietary, tracker-filled software. They will be running something built by the community, for the community. The Linux migration has begun and there's no turning back. In the coming months, keep an eye on the Linux kernel updates. Watch for new developments in desktop environments and compatibility layers. You will see the fingerprints of those 50 engineers all over the code. You will see a level of polish and professionalism that Linux has never seen before. And at the same time, watch Windows. See if the bugs become more frequent. if the ads become more intrusive, and if the updates become more desperate. The divergence between these two paths will tell you everything you need to know about the future of tech. The story of the 50 who quit will be told in computer science classes for years to come. It will be the case study in how to lose a market through corporate overreach. But it will also be a story of hope. A story about how a small group of dedicated people can take the best of their experiences and use them to empower the entire world. The Linux migration isn't just about software, it's about a more democratic and transparent future. And for that, we can all be thankful that those engineers decided to hand in their notices. Microsoft might try to pivot. They might try to release a light version of Windows or a privacy edition, but for many it's too little, too late. The trust is gone. Once a user experiences the freedom and speed of a well-tuned Linux system, going back to Windows feels like stepping back in time. It feels heavy, slow, and nosy. The migration is a one-way street for most people. And as the tools get better and the support gets stronger, that street is getting wider and more crowded every day. Bill Gates, the man who once dominated the world of technology, is now seeing the limits of his influence. No amount of money can buy back the developers who have found a new purpose. No amount of lobbying can stop the global community from building something better. The Linux migration is the ultimate proof that in the digital age, power belongs to the people who write the code and the people who use it. The era of the corporate OS is fading, and the era of the open-source desktop is finally here. Microsoft is in crisis, and the world is moving on to something better, something faster, and something more human. As we conclude this exploration, think about your own digital footprint. Think about the tools you use every day. Are they serving you, or are you serving them? The migration is open to everyone. You don't have to be a senior engineer to choose privacy and performance. You can join the movement today. All it takes is a USB drive and a little bit of curiosity. The future is open, and it's waiting for you to take control. The crisis at Microsoft is just a sign that the old world is ending, and a new, more exciting one is just a reboot away. Welcome to the Linux migration. It's going to be a wild ride.